All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to the fourth installment of the J-Mac and the Stallion podcast. We got a little routine going on. How are you feeling, Jason?
It's cold outside,
Yeah,
so I'm feeling cold.
but how are you feeling about the podcast?
Fire, dude.
Dude,
this
it's
podcast
fire.
is lit.
Honestly, this podcast is so lit that it's going to transcend the cold outside, and it's going to be summer before we know it. So, we got that going on. So we're just going to get right into it. We're starting off, again, NBA season is in full swing, especially with the playoffs. So we're going to start with that.
Before you start, I just want to let you know that last week, I called the Golden State series. I told you, I literally spoke it into existence.
You LeVar Balled it?
I channeled my inner LeVar Ball, and I told you the Warriors were going to win in 4.
See, yeah, I mean, you called that one, but, let's be completely fair. I still might call that Toronto-Milwaukee series Toronto in 6, because after 2 putrid games by Toronto, the series is tied at 2-2. They could totally do it, pull it off, Toronto in 6. So
yeah, I was way off.
You said what? Milwaukee in 5?
Milwaukee in 5.
Yeah, that's definitely off. You should probably listen to my expertise next time, just saying, because I might actually call this one even though you already got one right. So
you know what? Next time I'll just cover Western Conference and you just cover Eastern Conference.
I know, for real. Yeah, that's where our predictions seem to be going good. But anyways, talking about predictions, we're going to get right into it with the Golden State Portland series. Obviously, it was a sweep, a clean 4-0. I called 5 because 5 for Golden State because I thought Portland might get hot one game. And a lot of the games they did, but the Warriors were able to overcome. And so, Jason, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on maybe some individual games that happened within the series, maybe the series as a whole. What were your kind of overarching thoughts or takeaways from that sweep?
If you look at game 4 for the Warriors, one thing that I thought was very interesting and it's very important to point out is that Draymond Green and Stephen Curry both got triple-doubles, which is the first time in NBA history that 2 teammates have ever in the same game gotten triple-doubles, especially in the playoffs. In crunch time, game 4, this is a closeout game for them. They wanted to make sure that they could, just secure the win and pack up and get ready for the finals. And as much as I dislike the Warriors, I can't disregard talent. Like Draymond Green, at least in this series and in starting in the series before, he's been starting to play really, really well, like the Warriors of old, before Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant's a great player, but I just feel like, game 4 was huge. Stephen Curry went 7 of 16 from threes, 11 assists, 13 rebounds, and then Draymond came in clutch, shot 7 of 13 from the field, and 18 points, 11 assists, and 14 rebounds. So he was kind of all over the place. So overall, I just feel the Warriors were a better team. I know there were some reports that I read that Damian Lillard was playing with some partially broken ribs or something like that. So I know that kind of affects his play, but I mean he still played well. But I mean his teammates didn't really step up that well. So. Yeah, it was pretty putrid, I think, by Portland most of the series. I mean, they had some good individual play, but not really a great team effort all around. But really the series comes down to the Warriors, and I'm going to go with my man Stephen Curry again. It comes down to his play. And I was looking at some statistics there. The statistics showed on the screen after Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. And the statistic is that Stephen Curry has scored 30 points in the past 5 straight games, scoring 33 in the closeout game versus Houston, 36 in Game 1 against Portland, 37, followed by 36, followed by 37. And to me, we're seeing a better version than the Stephen Curry of old. That's kind of what I think, because I think within the past 2 years, Stephen Curry has been overshadowed by Kevin Durant at a lot of times, especially in the playoffs, specifically in the finals, not winning a finals MVP, even though he's played really well. I think Stephen Curry has come out in this postseason once Kevin Durant went down and
really tried to solidify himself as like one of the best players in basketball. And I think he's done that. I think he's done a really good job of reminding everyone how good he is. And this guy, I don't know, he just keeps finding a way to get better and better. I mean, I don't remember Steph Curry being this consistent in the playoffs ever as a Warriors fan. So I think him elevating his game to a new level is the reason why the Warriors were able to take it in 4. And when you think about it, the Warriors haven't lost a game since KD went down. I think it was in game 4 or 5 of the second round.
I'm not sure, but that sounds right.
It sounds about right. So game 5, 6, they won, and then they swept. So they're a clean 6-0 without Kevin Durant because of this man, Steph Curry. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. Jason, do you have any thoughts about Portland, where they go from here? Do you think they just have to run it back? Do you think they need to add more talent? What do you think is the major obstacle for them being held back here?
No, yeah, that's a great question. I give props to Portland. They did something they've never done in a long time and make it to the Western Conference Finals. I think that's huge for them, and it's honestly something to build off of. The Warriors, I mean, you have to give it to them. They're a great team. It's a dynasty, and so for Portland, the biggest question marks I have is they need better production from Rodney Hood and Seth Curry. I mean, I was kind of looking forward to the big brother, little brother matchup, to be honest, and I was hoping the little brother would kind of, stun out. We all know how good Steph is. No, we all know how good Steph is, but when you're a younger brother, you always want to be better than your older brother. Your older brother's your hero. I mean, you always look up to him, and I'm sure, Seth probably looks up to Steph, but I was expecting more out of those two, especially Rodney Hood. Rodney Hood, some games he's so, big, he's so crucial. He'll come out off the bench and score at least, 15 or 16. But then there's some games you're just like, where'd he go? Is he even here in the gym? Like, you're just like, you just forget about him.
Yeah.
He's not that consistent. And so for Portland to be better, I feel like they need better efficiency and better production from those two guards.
Yeah, I agree with that, with the backups needing to play a little bit better in those spots. But to me, I think Portland is good enough of a team to run it back simply because the fact they were missing Yusuf Nurkic, and I think it was very apparent in that series that a dominant post presence, maybe not necessarily dominant, but a very good post presence was needed because I saw a lot of times where there was a switch and the center can't keep up with a Steph or a Clay,
especially with the separated shoulder.
Exactly.
I mean, so he is limited too, but
then he's not a good defender by any regards. Before that, so I think there's times when that happens. Just kind of coming in the lane, there were times where it was just too easy for those guys coming down the lane. Defensively, I think they need a little bit more of a post presence and a threat down there. I think Yusuf Nurkic can provide that. Maybe they look to add a center, a big. Could you imagine
Anthony Davis,
DeMarcus Cousins?
Ooh, that'd be cool.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Portland with that kind of a threat down low, I think that's kind of what makes the Warriors a lot more formidable. Is that you've got like a scoring threat of Draymond and KD down low at a lot of times, and you also have like the high options of Steph and Clay. So it opens up a lot of the three, I think, the three balls, and then, it just kind of opens up your offense, gives you a lot more space. So I think Portland, congratulations on an awesome season. No one would have guessed in the preseason that Portland would have been in the Western Conference Finals with the Warriors. So I think they overachieved this year, so good job, Portland. Is there anything else you want to add about Portland, Golden State? Well, actually, this is one thing I want to talk about is the Warriors making 5 straight NBA Finals, and that hasn't been done since the 60s Celtics with Bill Russell. And to put that in perspective, they did that. They made more. I think they made 10 straight, but there were only 8 teams in the NBA, or whatever the NBA was at the time. So how impressive of an achievement do you think this is for the Warriors?
I think it's a good achievement based off of, not having KD, and it kind of shows you like what life after KD could be like if he decides to leave. Honestly, I really don't think it's that big of an achievement. And I mean, for them, but I understand that what they're trying to do is, do a three-peat, and I think that's, more of like an achievement. If they can do that, then I mean, hands down. I mean, they're already a dynasty, but it's like cemented into like dynasty, like legendary history. I mean,
Yeah, because pretty much every dynasty does do a three-peat at some point.
I mean, what you have the Lakers of old, you have the Phil Jackson Bulls, even
Shaq Kobe Lakers.
Shaq Kobe Lakers. I mean, and I'm sure
The Celtics, I
back
think.
in the day, yeah, I was just about to say Bill Russell and the Celtics. So, yeah. So I think if they can cement that three-peat, I mean, for sure.
Yeah. Kind of the curious thing that came to mind is like, I don't even think the Spurs ever went back to back, but they won 5, and I think that's insane. It's like, 20 years of dominance, but they were never able to three-peat or even like back to back. But with the Warriors, I think this is a extremely impressive accomplishment because of kind of how they've done it. They're the team that's revolutionized basketball, that's changed the way that people play, the way that people space, just kind of everything about it, and how they were able to do it with the most unlikely superstar of all, Stephen Curry. Again, I'm going to heap so much praise on this guy because I think he's that good, that special, but I mean, think how unlikely it was of Steph Curry, coming out as a rookie and him with all his ankle problems 3-4 years into his career, and then to have him explode and be this, I think is pretty impressive. And I think it goes really to the organization. I'm going to give them a lot of credit on this too because they have good coaching. They've always had a good system with Steve Kerr and a lot of good players around, and management's good. They're always able to bring in good pieces around them. So I think this is an organization-wide accomplishment. And I agree with you though in the sense that the three-peat I think means more than the 5 straight, because getting there's one thing, but winning 3 in a row is completely another. So so those are our thoughts on the Warriors Trailblazers series. We're going to move on to the Toronto-Milwaukee series where, as it stands from last night, the Toronto Raptors were able to tie the series 2-2 after dropping the first 2 games at home. And so, Jason, I'm going to start with you again. I think this series is really, at this point, can be divided into 2 separate series, like sub-series, games 1 and 2 and games 3 and 4. So let's start with games 1 and 2, kind of what you saw, what you thought about it, and then we'll move on to games 3 and 4.
What I saw in 1 and 2, specifically to start with game 1, I saw a very competitive game. This final score was 108-100. And if you watched that game, I mean, you'd think that Toronto was going to win the game. I mean, they had the lead most of the whole game, and then come fourth quarter, Giannis and the boys came in and showed out. Especially I think wasn't that the game that Brook Lopez just like came out of nowhere?
He was insane. He had
just
a bunch
dropped
of threes,
threes.
like 27 points
Oh
with
my
like
gosh.
5 threes or something ridiculous, like Steph Curry numbers.
I can't remember if it was that game that he did it or game 2.
I thought it was game 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you saw other people stepping up, in the fourth quarter for the Bucks, and I kind of felt bad for Toronto, just because I was just like, dang, like they pretty much had that game, like they were dominating the whole time. But then game 2 was just a blowout. I mean, final score I think was 125-103.
Yeah, you got it right.
Dude.
Nailed it right on the head. That was good memory, Jason. You're like some sort of freaking Rain Man over here. I don't know what I'm doing.
I know. Take me to Vegas.
All right,
dude.
take you to
Bets, dude.
Vegas.
Let's go. About to make the bills.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Game 2, I saw a more dominant Bucks team. They took more control, and they had better all-around, production from their bench. I mean, as you stated, this is becoming a very heated, intense, game series right now. It can go either way. Mark, I know you have a good basketball eye. What do you think about games 3 and 4, and where do you think it's going to go? To 6 and 7 possibly.
So, yeah,
5 and 6.
Yeah, no problem. I think the biggest game of the series was for Toronto was definitely game 3 because down 0-2, you come back home, defend home court, and you have a chance in the series, and that's exactly what we saw. I think the biggest storyline out of that game was the play of Kawhi Leonard on both ends of the floor, and this is why I keep preaching Kawhi is one of the best two-way players in basketball, because Kawhi was able to play 52 minutes, contribute 30 some odd points, 36, and then more importantly than that, he put the clamp down on Giannis. And Giannis is the engine of that team, kind of like we say with the Warriors, Steph is the engine of the Warriors. Giannis is definitely the engine of the Bucks. He's the facilitator, he's the go-to scorer, he's their everything. And I got this stat from Bleacher Report that perfectly illustrates how good of a job Kawhi Leonard did on Giannis Antetokounmpo. So out of 41 possessions, Giannis Antetokounmpo only had 4 points. He was shooting 2 for 12 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. He had 1 assist and 2 turnovers. I mean, just think about those numbers. Giannis is probably going to be the MVP, right? And he's just this dominant athletic freak, but Kawhi Leonard was able to stunt him to the tune of 4 points? Are you kidding me? That's unheard of. I've never heard of anything like that, to where it's been that dominant, and to then to also play in double overtime and play those 52 minutes. You know, he was a little bit breaking down at the end because I think it was a lot to do with fatigue, but man, I just have to give hats off to Kawhi, because I thought Game 3 is kind of what we were going to see a lot in the series. Not necessarily that Giannis was going to only score 4 points, but we're going to see Kawhi Leonard really put the clamps down on Giannis and limit his effectiveness in relation to the rest of his team. And then Game 4 was a blowout by Toronto, and really what it comes down to, I think Game 4 was the bench play of the Raptors, because if you look at it, Kawhi Leonard 19 points, something like that. But it ended up being their bench. Van Vliet, Norman Powell, and Serge Ibaka each contributed. So Norman Powell, 18 points off the bench. Serge Ibaka, 17 points off the bench.
Double-double, too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And then Fred Van Vliet, 13, right? And then, like you said, the double-double with 13 rebounds for Ibaka. And then 5 rebounds for Norman Powell. I mean, like, so it was a group effort, and I have to give a lot of credit to Kyle Lowry with his 25, 6, and 5. He's a very underrated player in basketball. I think he's one of the better point guards. I'm not going to say he's a top 10 point guard or anything like that, but he's definitely one of those energy players that teams really rally around him. And if he's playing well, it seems like the Raptors can also play well. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Game 5 is going to be back in Milwaukee. I really want to see what kind of game we get, because when you look at all the games in isolation, we've had quite a bit of a spread in games. We've had close game, Milwaukee win, close game, Toronto win, blowout Milwaukee, blowout Toronto. So what are we going to get? That's the real question. So, Jason, I'm going to ask you, what do you think we're going to see in Game 5 in Milwaukee? What type of game?
We're going to see Drake go courtside and alter some more free throws for Giannis. Because I'll tell you what.
In Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
That is a ballsy call, my man.
He's going to do it.
Oh, man.
I mean, that's just one thing I loved about Game 4. It's just the hype around Drake. and if you watch the video, he's just going crazy, dude. He's just calling him out. I mean, Giannis, he was okay for the line, 6 of 10. But as a team, collectively, they only shot 65% from the free throw line versus, like, Toronto, 89%. Yep. So, I mean, those points matter, you know. And
definitely.
So I think, you know, going into Game 5, like, that's going to be an area where, you know, it's going to make a difference, you know. Be a little bit more efficient from the free throw line. Make those free throws in. You know, and hopefully my boy Drake can make it. Shout out to you, homie. Hope to see you there. And if you get on courtside, just save me a seat, okay?
All right. yeah, like Drake's going to save you. See, like, fly you out from, like, Rexburg in his private jet, go out to Milwaukee, but...
Yeah, man. Just fly to Idaho Falls, man. It's just down the road.
Right. No, man. That'd be really cool, but, you know, again, we fantasize. Game 5... really it comes down to Kawhi's defense. Like I said, if Giannis Antetokounmpo doesn't really have it going, can't really get in a rhythm, kind of like you're saying, 6 for 10 from the line, I don't think it's getting it done. The pattern I noticed, I know it's kind of a small sample size, but the most, when Giannis has scored 25 or under, the Raptors have won. Mm-hmm. I mean, 25-4, so that's kind of like, oh man, that's not that big of a deal, right? And then I'm just going to go back just for giggles and looks. So Giannis in Game 2 scored 30, and obviously Milwaukee won. And then in Game 1, going back, Giannis scored 24 points. So not perfect, but I mean, it's really about limiting Giannis. When I think, like I said, Milwaukee's going to live and die with Giannis. If you can limit his effectiveness and his efficiency mostly from the field and really cut off a lot of his passing lanes, I think he can be had. So I expect a Toronto winning Game 5. I think you're going to have a good team effort out of Toronto. Even at home, it's going to be hard for Milwaukee to mentally get over kind of the 2 losses, I think. So yeah, I have Toronto winning Game 5 and 6 because that's also my prediction is Toronto and 6. So Jason, what do you think about Game 5? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, one thing I do want to see is for Milwaukee is more production out of Eric Bledsoe. They're starting point guard. Past 2 games, game 3 averaged, I think he got 8 points, and in game 4 he only got 7 points. And it seems like George Hill, who's their backup, has been actually a little bit more productive. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's just how he plays, his style of play, or if he's just able to take advantage of the time, that when he's on the court. But for someone as big as being a point guard for a team, I think at least what I want to see is more production out of him. I think he's kind of like an X factor in a sense, and how he orchestrates the team and how he runs the offense. And so I think what we're going to expect in Game 5 is kind of like what you were talking about, just a big defensive battle. Kawhi I think is going to have a really good game, and I think he's going to make a big difference when it comes to getting steals, turnovers, forcing turnovers.
Yeah.
And if that's the case for Toronto, I want to see more of that with Giannis, his teammates. Chris Middleton, all-star. He's a great team player, and he's pretty good this year. And I want to see them kind of dig deep, defensively, get some turnovers force some turnovers. And then really make it hard for Toronto to score.
Yeah. Going back to your George Hill comment, I think George Hill is probably a little bit better in this series in the sense that he can shoot the 3 ball pretty well.
Yeah.
I think to beat Toronto, you're going to have to shoot the 3 ball, so I think you're kind of dead on with George Hill. I mean, Eric Bledsoe, he's not necessarily a 3-point shooter, but if he can hit a couple of threes, like we saw with when Brook Lopez was hitting threes, when the team is hitting threes, I think Toronto's can be had there. So, definitely watch for that tomorrow night, I think, is the game.
Yeah.
Either Thursday night, let me see. So tune into that on Thursday night, yep, for sure. And then we will see what Toronto and Milwaukee will do, because I think this is Game 5 is a big defining game in this series to really dictate how it's going to go. So, yeah. Especially being tied at 2-2. But anything else you want to add about that series?
No, it's business time, and when you run a business, one thing that you have to have is trust within an organization. And, going into my favorite organization, the Lakers, there's a huge controversy and topic right now that with Magic Johnson stepping down as head of basketball operations. And, Mark, I know you've heard a little bit about it. What are your thoughts about Magic stepping down? And what does that mean for the Lakers, and where do you see them going?
To me, Magic stepping down is really like a shocker, and also I think it's a net negative thing. And really the reason I think that is because a big reason why LeBron James decided to go to Lakers was because of Magic Johnson's vision of winning now and building a team around him, right? But as we have seen with Magic Johnson going on to First Take and kind of spilling a lot of workings in their organization, the organization isn't that well run, or it might not have a direction, or there's a lot of infighting, however you want to put it. I just think that this is going to be really sad because LeBron only has a few prime years left, I think. And to sell a guy on a vision that well, to bring him to Los Angeles, to only resign a year later, if I'm LeBron James, like the biggest storyline I think should be him, like, what am I thinking? What, like, do I want to be there? Or, are my last prime years, am I just going to fade away like that? I don't think a guy like LeBron James, his caliber of player, wants to do that. So that's kind of where my initial thoughts come from. Really, the player LeBron's perspective, and it's crazy. I'm taking LeBron's side on anything. I'm like an avid Warriors fan and have hated LeBron ever since the Warriors started playing him in the finals. But yeah, I really feel for LeBron James in this situation.
Okay. I'll tell you from my perspective, when Magic first announced that he's going to be joining the Laker organization, I was excited.
Yeah.
Magic Johnson is a Laker legend, Showtime, and I thought, okay, someone of his caliber, his personality is going to be perfect for rebuilding the Lakers and not necessarily rebranding, but bringing back that Showtime mentality that we're here to win. This is LA. And so, I was excited. And if you watch the interview, he even says he felt like year one was a huge success. One of the big things that, he wanted to accomplish was getting under the salary cap. They were way over. I mean, they made some very questionable signings of Timothy Mozgov.
I remember how mad you were about that.
Dude,
we were shooting around, and it's like that. I was trying to make you feel better. That's not a horrible signing, and you were just not having any of it.
Dude, I was so pissed. And then the in addition with Luol Deng.
Oh man, that was horrible too.
And I mean, but I got that, because trading away some of those players, they were able to, mentioning. D'Angelo Russell. I mean, that got him the pick to then draft Kyle Kuzma. So, I mean, and he's turned out to be, a up and coming stud.
A good player.
And I like Kyle Kuzma. So, I'll give that to him. But then, coming into year two, things, according to him, started to go downhill. The biggest question and the biggest issue I have with this whole entire thing is, the power that he was told that he would have in being in this position. He was told that by Jeanie Buss, Magic, you're in charge of basketball. I'm just here to run, and own and to run the business. Okay. With that being said, Magic's in charge of all the the basketball, stuff,
all the operations,
trades,
free agency. Draft.
I mean, let's not mention any of those tampering things that have come out. I think he was learning on the way, learning on
the spot.
Because you think of Magic, there's the Magic Johnson as a player, the big personality, but then there's Magic as a GM or as an executive,
the businessman
that has to follow those rules. And I thought he was just kind of in both of those worlds, and he learned quickly that he can't. But that's a different story and a different topic for another day. But I just feel that, according to his report, that, people Jeanie Buss, didn't agree with, he mentioned later that some of the trade talks, Anthony Davis, trade talks that, he, put out more players than he discussed with Jeanie Buss about, and she kind of lost a little trust in him in that. But if you tell someone you're the head of basketball operations, then you're giving that man the power to make those kind of decisions. And I think Anthony Davis in that little situation is a player that you trade those players for. He's a once in a, you can say generation, or he's
generational talent's the term that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, he's a freak of nature. He's one of those players that is worth all of those, players, so to speak. And so I just have a problem with just the trust issue, I think Magic, if he were to be in the situation a little bit longer, and was able to make more of those decisions, I think we would see the Lakers turn around. But, to me, the whole front office for the Lakers is just a mess, and it's just out of control. And they just need to find an identity, and hopefully with some of these new hires, they just hired Frank Vogel as head coach. Maybe that's the start of being in a new direction. I don't know. What do you think?
Man, I just think it's just a dysfunctional organization. This reminds me a lot of the Al Davis days as a Raiders fan, where Al Davis would hire coaches, and he had no GM. He was the GM making all those decisions. But I mean, it kind of reminds me of that where, like, you kind of hire a guy to falsely give him power, and then it creates this power struggle, and it's just kind of confusing. And I can see why that led to a lot of problems within the Lakers organization, because when you're kind of confused about how much power, what you can make, that really limits your decision making, and it just throws off whatever plan or vision you might have. So that's kind of what I think about that. Who do you think, Jason, is most to blame for the front office being dysfunctional or the lack of success on the court for the Lakers?
Well, on the court, honestly, it's the players. I think they're young, so there's some inexperience there. I mean, they tried to bring in veteran talent, but at the end of the day, like, they are what they produce, and so I kind of blame them a little bit, but I also blame Jeanie Buss, with the just whole dysfunction of the leadership, positions within the organization. You can question draft picks. I know Magic Johnson did draft Lonzo Ball, and that right now is such a big,
you could have had like Jason Tatum, De'Aaron Fox.
And at the time we didn't know. We had an idea.
I knew.
That jump shot, you could tell, I guess.
It was so broke.
But, I think it all ultimately goes down to management. Who you put in these key, high up, positions, and coming together and building a plan, and so ultimately I feel like it is Jeanie Buss and the direction that they're headed.
So I kind of think about Rob Pelinka and kind of his whole contribution in this whole episode, this whole drama that's been coming out thanks to Magic Johnson telling us all about it. Where does his responsibility come in when he's kind of eyeing Magic Johnson's job and really causing a lot of this dysfunction to me in the organization, where he's bad-mouthing Magic Johnson to pretty much everyone behind his back? Like, there were reports coming out that he knew Magic Johnson wouldn't be there because of some of his businesses or whatever he's taking care of, and he would like ask people, oh, do you know where Magic is? Have you seen Magic? And so kind of like inciting those feelings of almost doubt or lack of faith in Magic and his ability. I think that probably trickled up to Jeanie Buss, because obviously Jeanie Buss trusts Rob Pelinka enough to keep him there. I think that could have been a really big contributing factor. Rob Pelinka talking to Jeanie and telling, oh, Magic isn't really working hard, or Magic's doing this, Magic's in, out of the office, really not putting the time in, and, those kinds of things over time, that he was there for two years, a long time, can really get into your head and really cause that rift, kind of like you were saying, the mistrust, which led to probably the power struggle. So I'm going to put a lot of this blame on Rob Pelinka, because he kind of knew what influence he had within the organization, and he wanted more. He wanted a lot more power, and I think that caused a lot of problems.
No, I can see that, and it's like, my question is like, if Jeanie Buss, trusts and likes Rob Pelinka, why did she make Magic Johnson head of basketball operations a few years ago and not Rob Pelinka? You look at this from Rob's point of view. Let's say they had a good relationship. I don't know what kind of relationship they have, but let's say they had a pretty good one. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, he kind of already has a feel of like what he wants to do and where he wants to go within this organization. And then all of a sudden,
outside hire.
Yeah, it's an outside hire. Magic is a Laker legend, but like, if you look at it from Rob's position, I'm sure he was pissed. He was just like, frick, like, Magic's never been, in these kind of business situations. Actually, no, I take that back. He does own the Dodgers, so I'm sure he has had some business. So I take that back. Sorry, followers, my bad. But I'm sure, like, to some degree, that Rob Pelinka probably didn't trust Magic. He, even though he is a legend and he's a basketball icon, I bet you he just didn't agree with it. And I think for him to basically within the Laker organization, make those comments of where's Magic, and kind of put a bad image on him. Mm-hmm. That's just. It's like a sneaky little snake, dude. Just freaking little weasel, dude. Just trying to backstab.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what it is. And I just don't understand why he would do that, especially when Magic apparently has had conversations with, Rob Pelinka saying, I'm only going to be here for a short period of time. Maybe Rob felt that he was good enough to not wait that long to take the position, that he didn't need to be quote-unquote trained or mentored,
yeah.
But still, I just feel like from person to person, or at least from like a basketball like fan perspective, even if Magic Johnson was like told me that like he wanted to mentor me, I would freaking take that, dude. I'm like, I wouldn't complain. I mean that's just me. But like it just doesn't make sense to me, to be honest. I think Rob Pelinka's. I told you this in previous podcasts that I think he's the reason that they've been so bad, and like I just had a bad feeling about him, and lo and behold, here's some of these kind of bad, comments and bad things about him that are coming out.
Yeah, I don't think this is a good look for Rob Pelinka at all. But let me look at the other side of it as well. I'm Rob Pelinka. I'm sitting there. I'm very trusted, or at least I'm going to assume I'm very trusted in the organization of the Lakers enough to where I'm being kept around. For crap's sake, I was an agent before I was doing anything in terms of basketball operations. I was Kobe's agent. That's how I got in. I was Kobe's agent. Kobe played for the Lakers for a long time. Jeanie, Bus, Kobe, all that. Makes sense. Then Mr. Outside Hire comes in, a former player, and maybe there was a little bit of a sense that not necessarily Magic Johnson, the human being, but Magic Johnson kind of what he was, a businessman and a player. If you look at like other sports, who's to say that Rob Pelinka hasn't looked at like somewhere like the Charlotte Hornets and seen a team run by Michael Jordan and how that goes? And maybe he's looked at even further like Denver, where you have the GM as a former player, John Elway, and the kind of success that can yield. Maybe it could be something like where he felt kind of slighted, and at the same time just kind of felt like Jeanie Buss was making the wrong decision just in terms of basketball knowledge or IQ or operations or whatever. So I can kind of see why he saw it that way, but he just kind of has done a lot of damage to that organization, obviously. Especially to a guy like Magic Johnson, he has no ill intentions. He's not coming in there to the Lakers organization to make a mockery of Rob Pelinka or put a bad product on the court. And like you said, he's talked to Rob. It was only a temporary thing. His one goal was to make the team better. And it's just kind of sad to see that a prestigious organization like that has kind of this power struggle. So where do you think it goes from here? Do you think Rob Pelinka could turn this thing around, or do you think we're going to see a lot of the same issues arise over the next few years?
Well, the first move that they made is, they did fire Luke Walton, and then they did hire Frank Vogel. I'm not sure if Frank Vogel is the right coach or was really part of the direction. Because if you think about it, they basically wanted Ty Lue over Frank Vogel to begin with. And so I wonder if this is just like, just the next best thing, or if they actually really believe in Frank Vogel. So going forward, I think we're just going to have to, wait and see. I know Frank Vogel is a very analytic kind of guy, and I think, that sometimes works as a coach. Where they focus more on like the statistics and the stats,
aka the Houston Rockets organization.
And so it's going to be interesting to see. Let's see if LeBron can function well with this kind of coach, be willing to take coaching from him and respect him, and really follow him. And if LeBron follows him, then you're going to see all the other players follow as well.
So I agree with you. We're going to have to wait and see. I do not think it's a positive thing, Rob Pelinka being in charge. I think we're going to see a lot of those continued struggles, but that's just my opinion. So anyways, we're going to move on, talk about some more NBA news. Surprise, surprise. A lot of NBA talk on our podcast, but it's kind of getting towards the end of the NBA season, right? So we have the Western Eastern Conference Finals, and the Western's obviously over. So the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, and then almost immediately thereafter is going to be NBA free agency. And so we have a lot of key free agents coming on the market. Like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Draymond, just a litany of people. Kemba Walker, a lot of Kristaps, a ton of people. ton of players.
Star-studded.
Star-studded free agency group. So that just kind of got us to thinking kind of what direction teams should take, what they should do in free agency, and who are kind of the biggest names that should go where in our opinion. So Jason, I want to start with you. Can you give me a name of a player in which organization should really consider that player doing whatever they can to bring him in?
For me, it's the Dallas Mavericks re-signing Porzingis. I know he's never played a game with Dallas, but to me, when they traded for him, they basically were saying like, we want you to be the next Dirk. And with Porzingis also being a foreigner, like it just kind of like fits in Dallas. I mean, if I was Dallas Mavericks though, going into free agency, you know, I want the Porzingis as the player to come and be on our team, but I mean he's had a lot of recently some off the court issues. There was a report in Latvia outside of a nightclub where he got into a bloody altercation. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but maybe for the young core that they're trying to build and the new kind of culture, I'm not saying that's going to affect that, but I mean that's definitely a question mark to build off of. Do we want to bring this kind of person in that might bring in trouble? And I mean there's already reports in New York about reports about him raping a girl in his apartment complex.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that one.
There's that, and then I think you even showed me a little tweet that just showed when he was still with the Knicks that he demanded a trade. I mean, do you remember what that tweet said? Or I think it was on Bleacher Report.
It was something to do. Let me think.
Was it
yeah, it is Bleacher Report, and the headline says Kristaps gave New York an ultimatum, and that according to Knicks president Steve Mills, Porzingis threatened to go back to Europe if he wasn't traded within 7 days.
And so, I mean, I know he's a good player, but I mean, right now Porzingis, he's coming off of that wasn't an ACL injury that he had.
Yes.
Or MCL.
Some lower leg injury.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have to see, hopefully he can, become healthy and become, the Porzingis god of old.
Porzingis. Rest in peace, David, our resident Knicks fan. Our buddy.
I just think the Dallas Mavericks have to make a decision. Obviously, they have the point guard of the future with Luka Doncic, excuse me. He's a stud. I mean, I think he's going to win Rookie of the Year hands down. If they are able to bring back Porzingis and sign him to a long-term deal, then they have the potential to build something new. And they have young players, and it might be exciting to see basketball rise again in Dallas.
Yeah.
I mean, those vintage days with Dallas versus the Miami Heat.
Oh, that's when I kind of started following basketball.
Or Dallas versus the Pistons. Dude,
man.
Those were some fun games to watch. I mean, vintage Dirk was filthy.
Hitting dagger after dagger against LeBron's team,
Oh, and those fades, dude, that he would always do.
It was just fade. The rainbow.
Oh,
and,
God.
I can envision whatever Game 6 or whatever it was, the closeout. Dirk just turning around and putting in the shot, and the slow motion camera of just a perfect arc and nothing but net.
But yeah, so I would like to see Porzingis sign with Dallas, a long-term deal. We'll just have to see if Dallas is willing to invest in him.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. Dallas is an up-and-coming team. Really, it's going to be about putting talent around Luka Doncic. So I think that's a very valid point. I'm going to look at the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets are one of those teams that are a championship team, but I don't think they're there yet. And they're not there yet because of the Golden State Warriors. Though, Houston might almost be as talented as them, especially with Kevin Durant maybe not being there next year. They're probably a team with equal talent level. I think the Warriors are the team to beat still. They're going to be that team that has to go out and take that risk. Remember that Melo signing? It was a big risk, but they needed to add talent so they could compete with the Warriors. What'd you show me a picture of Austin Rivers for?
Dude, I told you last podcast the baby Harden beard, dude.
The baby Harden. Yeah, so the Houston Rockets, Austin Rivers, baby Harden. How about baby Boogie Cousins? Potentially risky. I know I brought him to Portland, but I think DeMarcus Cousins is going to have a big market this summer in terms of NBA free agency. I don't think he's going to get like a supermax or anything crazy, but I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be interested in his services because he has proven that he can play well. Then again, there's the injury risk that's always present, but a lot of these teams that I think are very close, Portland, Houston, teams like that, are really missing that dominant post presence, and that's where I think the market for DeMarcus Cousins could happen. And I think Houston should do everything in their power to get that guy on board because, one, you'd be stealing from the Warriors, which would be a positive for you. Two, I really think he's the talent that they need to really put him over the edge because James Harden has proven in the playoffs he's not going to live up to the moment all the time. Chris Paul is aging, but a guy like DeMarcus Cousins that can get you easy high percentage buckets, I think would be perfect fit on that team. What do you think about that?
On which team?
The Houston Rockets.
I don't know if that's a good fit. But we'll see. I mean, he would maybe fit in with that ISO mentality, especially being a stretch five.
And he's a stretch five. That's the other thing they like. He shoot a ton of threes.
He can shoot a ton, and he shoots a ton. I had him in fantasy basketball one year. Money, dude. He was the number one player in the league.
And then he got injured.
And then I watched him tear his ACL. I cried I cried also because my friend Kedrick had Anthony Davis and offered me a trade a few days before that even happened. And so geez. I thought, man, that would have been the steal of the century.
To just trade an injured...
Oh, gosh. But I think I agree with you. I think he's going to be on a different team or at least get paid. I agree with you. It's not going to be like a crazy big deal. He does have a torn quad. So, and there were like some reports that he might actually return to the finals.
Could you imagine? Maybe. Could you imagine like the Bucks come in? They're like, all right, we just got to deal with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond. Bam! Out of nowhere, KD and Boogie both return.
Yeah, dude, that'd be insane. And especially for him because he's only played in 2 playoff games.
Mm-hmm.
He
has not played a lot.
He's inexperienced in the playoffs. He's a dang good player. I'd rather see him in that purple and gold. That's just me being selfish. If he decides to leave and if he goes to Houston, I think he might be able to fit in with that one-on-one mentality, that ISO ball, and he'd be perfect with like the stretch 5 shooting threes option. Mm-hmm. I just hope he doesn't, if he were to go there, he won't turn into like a Kevin Love where that's all he does is like jump shots.
I agree.
I always liked Kevin Love, but like when he was in Minnesota, he was a double machine. He was doing work in the paint.
Yeah.
And it's hard to defend that. When you have such a dominant post presence, it's hard.
Because it's a high percentage, right next to the basket.
And that's what DeMarcus Cousins is really good at is,
very technical.
Very technical, very angry. They call him the bully, one of the big bullies of the NBA.
Yeah.
But that comes, though, with a positive side. Because when you have someone of that mentality who can, let's say defensively, be such a post presence to, like, block shots and to force people, instead of, like, driving it, to kick it out because they're like, oh, frick, dude, there's freaking boogs. I don't want to get swatted or, get checked by him. DeMarcus Cousins has a lot of value.
Yeah.
Even though he has been injured for the past, year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yeah, long time.
I still think he has value. And I still think he has potential to grow and expand his game. If that's more from the three-point line, then so be it. But I'm excited to see what happens with him this offseason.
All right, perfect. So we talked about that. We didn't really talk about any of the big 3 free agents. Like, kind of interestingly enough, we didn't talk about KD, Kawhi Leonard, or Kyrie. So I just want to do a lightning round, maybe a sentence or 2 explanation of where we think these guys are going to end up.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to start with you, Kevin Durant.
LA.
Which team?
The Lakers.
The Lakers. You think KD's going to the Lakers?
Yeah, dude.
All right, that sounds kind of insane to me. I'm going to go with Warriors. I think he's going to do one more year there. For Pete. How about number 2, Kawhi Leonard?
Lakers as well.
Lakers as well. I'm going to go LA, but I'm going to go Clippers.
Clippers.
Yep. And then Kyrie Irving.
Obviously, the Knicks.
The Knicks. Dude, I hate you.
Let me just switch it up on you.
Just over here, like, switching it up.
I'm just messing. I could see, realistically, I'm going to say KD going to the Knicks. I'm going to say Kawhi Leonard. I'm actually going to say he stays.
Really?
I actually am. I think he's... I think Toronto's a good place for him.
I think so too, but I don't know if he'll stay. It's kind of interesting. We have the 1 and the 2 flipped, one staying, one going.
And then lastly, was it Kyrie?
Kyrie.
Oof, that's a tough one because there have been reports recently of him joining the Lakers or potentially teaming back up with LeBron. I'm actually going to say, believe it or not, I'm going to say the Nets.
The Nets.
I do.
Why? So what? Just really quick, why the Nets?
I'm not saying D'Angelo Russell is a problem or anything like that. He's been great. I think if you throw Kyrie in the mix, who can also help him a little bit more, mature as a player, as well as what Kyrie brings on offense, I think he kind of fits of how they play basketball.
Yeah.
And just the style of play that the Nets are doing right now. And it's his hometown. I mean, he's from New York. So.
Yeah, he's from there. He would probably want to play there. And I'm kind of on your boat with, I could see the Nets. As long as you have a system, it's never a problem to have 2 guards that can handle the ball like that. Like we've seen. I think Chris Paul and James Harden have really dispelled that belief. So Kyrie Irving, I'm going with the purple and gold, baby. I'm going with where you thought Kawhi and KD were going. I think Kyrie's going to team back up with LeBron. I think he's a little bit more humble now. Realizes how good he had it and what he left. And Showtime's back in LA, So I think that's how it's going to end up. So
okay, final real quick before we switch. Biggest question mark, Kemba Walker. I know we haven't really talked about him.
I have no idea.
What do you think he's going to stay with Charlotte, or do you think he's going to go to a new team? Real quick. I think he's going to be an X factor for a team come this free agency.
I agree. A new team. It's just kind of interesting because I can't think of a team off the top of my head. Like, actually,
Blazers.
Milwaukee.
I say Blazers.
Well, they have CJ. I think
they trade CJ.
You think so? Huh. That'd be really interesting. So I could see that one working. I think, that would be a really crowded backcourt. That's too much. I think Milwaukee. They go hard after a guy like that who can get you buckets and team him up with Giannis. I think they need to make a move like that. So, or even maybe Philly if they don't believe in Ben Simmons.
Ooh, Ooh, that's good. Good.
He can handle. He can score. He can pass. I mean, he's not like the greatest passer, but
let's just fingers crossed.
The reverse blitz. So I don't want to go anywhere except the Suns. Right? That would be crazy. Kemba Walker will be really interesting. When more reports come out, definitely we will be talking about that. But for sure, we're going to move on a little bit to... that's a lot of NBA news. I think that's the most we've ever talked about the NBA, and it was natural, seamless. Came out for us. Really love it. But we're going back to my first love, and that's football. We're going to talk about the NFL, and not as much news on the NFL today, but... the first thing we want to cover is something we've covered before. It's about Tyreek Hill and kind of his whole situation with the alleged domestic violence and the recordings, the phone calls, and whatnot. So I read a report today that I shared with Jason coming from Bleacher Report as well, that Roger Goodell says they are not going to interfere with police investigation on the Tyreek Hill situation.
Interesting.
What does that mean? I have no idea. It's crazy.
I think this is the NFL kind of, instead of making just a big decision to kind of like show their guns and like enforce like what they're trying to enforce with like domestic violence and stuff like that, like they've done in the past. I think this is them actually trying to analyze the situation and make a decision. I think what they're trying to do is trust the legal system instead of just enforcing their own rule.
Okay, that's an interesting take. I hadn't thought about that because they have gotten a lot of flack for like Ezekiel Elliott, for example.
Or even Adrian Peterson for spanking his own kid.
Yeah, or like beating his kid, really. Because I mean, this kid came out with like a bunch of bruises and it wasn't pretty. But I think that this whole Tyreek Hill thing, I think they're just sitting on it. I think that's all that means. I guess, to me. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or another, but they're just going to wait and see what evidence comes out because I think, like, what you said might be dead on. They don't want to rush to judgment right away and then have, like, not much more evidence come out or something that, makes it look like the NFL is making just this arbitrary judgment.
Thought, conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Right here, just came to me. Do you think possibly the NFL doesn't want to punish or suspend Tyreek Hill just based off of how well the Chiefs did last year and how well the ratings were when they were playing? Do you think that might... I mean, I'm not huge on conspiracy theories, but, I mean, you do have to consider the Chiefs are, if not the up-and-coming team and the most exciting team to watch coming this next season.
I wholeheartedly disagree. It's the Raiders.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah, obviously the Raiders.
I mean, you got the Browns, but
Chiefs
I feel
a close 30-second.
The Chiefs have such high expectations, and I think the NFL has high expectations for them. And, I mean, just to throw this out there, maybe they don't want to suspend him. Maybe they are trying to leave it up to the police to make, to make a decision in whatever evidence they find and go from there instead of just making their own assumptions or their own, investigation.
Yeah.
Just based off of ratings, and the money that they can make from the Chiefs.
I think you might actually have a point there. I hadn't considered that, but if you look at... I just went and looked at the Chiefs' schedule real quick, and just based off of here counting, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primetime games, right? And so, like you said, the Chiefs are an exciting team, and Tyreek Hill is an electrifying player. And when the NFL puts teams on primetime, they think it's because they're going to be exciting or good, and people are going to want to watch it, aka primetime, must-watch TV. I think there might be something to that. They don't want to rush to judgment on one of the NFL's most electrifying players if it could really affect their ratings on primetime because, Thursday Night Football has been getting a lot of flack. Monday Night Football sometimes gets some flack. Sunday night games sometimes get it, depending on the matchup. So if the games aren't good, I could totally see it. So you might have a little bit of volition here with your theory. That's kind of interesting. But, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. The one other thing that Roger Goodell did say that was kind of interesting is that he wants to sit down and meet with Tyreek Hill soon. What do you make of that?
I think he's just trying to kind of feel him out, feel out the situation from a commissioner standpoint. And I think he's going to ask him some clear, questions.
Did you do this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think he's going to do the same thing that he did with Kareem Hunt with these reports. I mean, Kareem Hunt specifically with the team. I mean, the team asked Kareem Hunt, the Chiefs, this is what I'm talking about, asked Kareem specific questions. Mm-hmm. And Kareem, he lied to him. I mean, we found out months later that he lied. He essentially just lied to their face. So I think basically what Roger Goodell's trying to do is feel out the situation.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I go back to the whole Chiefs thing. Did you do this? Yes, no. And if he's dishonest with them, then they find out more details. It's going to be really easy to pass that judgment from the NFL standpoint. So, anything else with this whole situation?
No. But one thing I think is interesting about the NFL is some biggest question marks coming. What about for this new NFL season? Do you have any predictions about teams and where they're going to go?
So, yeah, not necessarily predictions, but things that I am not so sure how they're going to play out.
Yeah,
kind of thing. I'll definitely start us off. And the first thing that I think about is Carson Wentz's health, because the Eagles are this really weird enigma of a team that play extremely well when Carson Wentz is there, he plays extremely well while he's there, and then he gets hurt the past couple seasons, and then this guy named Nick Foles will come in and get out of jail free card them and on to a Super Bowl win and almost beating the Saints in the second round of the playoffs. Miraculous game against the Bears in the first round. Very astounding, very tough defense. So how is Carson Wentz's health going to hold up? Did the Eagles make the right decision? Is he really going to be there for them late in December and in the playoffs? These are all questions that the Eagles have already kind of answered for all of us, and now we have to just kind of sit and wait and how it plays out, because I do not know. I don't know if these injuries for Carson Wentz are more fluky. I don't know if they're a chronic thing. I know something. I think it was probably back injury. I'm not sure exactly, but to me it sounds like there could be something chronic going on there. So really the Eagles put all their eggs in the Carson Wentz basket, and that has huge implications for that division because the Cowboys are a really good team. The Redskins have a really good defense, could do something in that division. So Carson Wentz's health. What do you think about that?
Dude, the biggest question I have is, can Carson Wentz run the Philly special the way that Nick Foles did?
Not if he's injured, you know.
I mean, I think that's the biggest question. So how is he going to run it, and can he run it the same way?
Yeah, that's a very huge question that everyone's been wondering, so now you know. My answer is going to be no. I think Carson Wentz's injury history is going to pop up again, and there's going to be no Nick Foles to bail him out. What is your prediction?
I think he stays healthy, and I think he's not going to have a dominant year, but he'll have a good year to build off of, and I think he'll have a great next season.
You think playoffs, if he does? Whatever you're saying?
Yeah, I say wild card.
Wild card, so you have your boys winning the division then?
Oh, for sure. Undefeated.
We're undefeated, 16-0. Poor Wentz is going to be like
Yep.
9-7 sneaking into the playoffs or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Close to there.
Close to there. Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, that's the first one. Jason, I know you have a big question mark, and go for it. I want to hear it.
My question is how well the Colts are going to do in 2019.
Okay.
I was very impressed with how Andrew Luck, who was the comeback player of the year, how he came back from that shoulder surgery, which everyone thought that
He was done.
He was done forever. I mean, the golden child, the next Peyton Manning. I mean, this kid coming into the league was predicted to be like one of the next greats, and I think he is a great quarterback. I mean, unfortunately, he had those injuries, but now that he's back, he came back last year and had a very good season. I think winning that playoff game against the Houston Texans was huge. What I liked about them is how they filled some holes through the draft. Specifically, they got Rock Ya-Sin. You know?
He would have been perfect in Vegas, by the way. You know, Rock Ya-Sin in the city of sin. I don't know. But anyways.
But no, he's a cornerback, so I think they fill a need there. But then also another one I liked was, let's see, what was his name? It was that receiver out of Ohio State.
Paris Campbell?
Yeah. I think T.Y. Hilton is the only dominant receiver that they have. He is a very quick receiver. And I think adding Paris Campbell to the mix is a good add for them. I think it adds a little bit more depth at the receiver position, a little bit more speed, a little bit more ability to do more things on the field for the Colts offense. And I think the Colts could possibly even be, a playoff or even Super Bowl team, depending on how well Andrew Luck continues to, I'm going to say, recover, from his injury and still just, make sure he's healthy. But if he's healthy, I mean, they have a chance. They really have a strong chance of winning or making the playoffs or even possibly going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The GM really turned that thing around in a hurry. They have a really good football team. Good offensive line, good defense, added another weapon for Andrew Luck. Really, my biggest question mark with the Colts is Andrew Luck and, his play. Going deeper into that, I think it's his arm strength because Andrew Luck has never been the biggest arm quarterback even coming out of Stanford, and I think the whole shoulder thing might have hindered that. And I think we saw some evidence of that in the playoff game against Kansas City. In Kansas City, a lot of those balls he was throwing was fluttering, and they did not look like they had any juice behind them. So I'm kind of curious to see how his arm strength, does it come back to normal? Does it develop? Or is he kind of going to be stuck there? Because I think a lot is riding on that shoulder literally, because if he can't go to, let's say, Colt plays Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Kansas City in the playoffs and throw the ball effectively, you're going to see a stunt in the growth for the Colts. So I think that's the biggest question mark, but I am really high on the Colts. I think they're a very good football team. I think they're going to do a lot of damage this next year. I think they're going to kind of pick up where they left off. But, anyways, we're going to move on to the next question mark. And the next question mark is, it kind of irritated me in a way because we cannot ever separate these two in any talk, sports discussion, and it is Nick Foles, because Nick Foles and Carson Wentz are going to be like forever intertwined in some way or another with all the things that were going on with them. But it is going to be Nick Foles, and as you all know, Nick Foles signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This offseason signed a pretty big contract to be their starting quarterback. Got rid of Blake Bortles. I think he got traded to the Rams, something like that. So my question mark for Nick Foles is, who is Nick Foles? Because I think the Jacksonville Jaguars took a big risk in signing him. We don't necessarily know who he is, because really Nick Foles has only played well in Philly the first time around and the second time around. Everywhere else he's gone in his career, he's kind of been not that good of a quarterback. I know I think he was on the Rams at one point playing for them, and he didn't play well, and back up in Kansas City, and he didn't even see the field. It was like those Alex Smith years with Andy Reid, and then he goes back to Philly and then has another career renaissance. I don't know what this guy's going to be, so I don't know how it's going to turn out. If he's even serviceable, I think Jacksonville has the chance to be a Super Bowl team. If he's bad, then you're just kind of stuck in that almost Blake Bortles kind of treading water, really dysfunctional locker room type situation. So, Jason, what are your thoughts on Nick Foles in Jacksonville and him being a question mark?
For me, I think he's a player and a team player that can run an offense the way you want to run. I don't think he's going to be an electric star or an electric quarterback, but he's a veteran quarterback that I think can just get the job done. He can win you games by making the right throws, making the right checkdowns, making the right reads, when he sees them, or even audibling out of a play. I think he's a teammate and a player that can help you out and win games. For me, looking at him, I'm not saying that he's going to be a superstar or they're going to go to the Super Bowl, but he kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. I remember watching the Baltimore Ravens play, especially when they got their first Super Bowl win in year 2000. Everyone knows about Ray Lewis being the leader of that defense, and Ed Reed, and
He wasn't there yet.
Ed Reed wasn't there yet?
No, it was like 2000. He got drafted
a
little bit later, but no.
But anyways, Ray Lewis, he was a very dominant player. I'm going to ask you this question. Do you know who their quarterback was?
Trent Dilfer. Yeah.
Trent Dilfer was a good quarterback.
Captain Checkdown.
But he wasn't a dominant quarterback. He got the job done. He did what he needed to do to help his team be in a position to win. And so I'm not saying he's on the same level as him, but he kind of reminds me of that kind of player where he is a good player that will help you win games, impact you in certain situations, and will just run the offense the way that you want to run it.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. So I understand what you're saying. Like, he kind of fills that role. I just think stylistically, Nick Foles is a little bit different. I think Trent Dilfer is a very safe quarterback. I think Nick Foles is going to stand in the pocket and throw that ball for better or worse, even with a guy hanging off of him. So, stylistically, it's going to be a little bit different. I think you're going to see more big plays with Nick Foles than you would see with Trent Dilfer, but there also is that bigger bust potential for Nick Foles. But they are filling that same role in the sense that they both had great defenses, dominant defenses even, and you just need him to do enough for you to win the game. You're not asking either of those guys to win the game for you. So it's going to be really interesting. I see, if I had to make a call, I don't see Nick Foles. I don't see him having that success that he did in Philly. I think he's going to be a little bit below average. What do you think?
I think he's going to be a little bit above average.
Okay.
That's just me.
Yeah, perfect. And, even average quarterback play for Jacksonville might be enough for them. So, it is what it is. But moving on to the last question mark. Jason, I know you have kind of a spicy little topic.
Yeah, we're talking about average people, and if you've seen anything about this NFL draft, there are some very non-average people. I want to refer to DK Metcalf. There have been reports that he has been doing performance-enhancing drugs. If you look at any of his Instagram photos, you will know what I'm talking about. That man is the Black Superman. That guy is jacked.
And you're totally joking about the PEDs and all that. You just have to look at the picture, and then Goodell's over there.
Oh yeah,
cup. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are any any quick drug testing for the Seattle's way.
You know, it's kind of funny, that whole like thing with drug testing. Pat McAfee went on the Rich Eisen show, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, something like that, and he talked about how he like booted a ball like an insane like amount of yards. I think it was like 80 yards or whatever it was. It was just a ridiculous amount of yards. And right after the game, he got like a steroids test, and then at like a certain point when you know, he didn't like have a good, or when he would get off the field and he didn't find like a little steroids test waiting for him, he's like, what, Goodell, you didn't think I had a good game? Or like that's kind of like the same with DK Metcalf, dude. That guy's gonna the random testing is gonna happen way too often. I mean, dude, that guy's a freaking power forward.
I know. I mean, coming out of high school, he was into powerlifting, and so he had a big advantage going into college, especially his freshman year. He was lifting more than sophomores and juniors. So, I mean, he's very fast. He ran a 4.3 40. He's proven that he has that breakaway speed, and he's a big boy. He's a big receiver. Kind of reminiscing of the old Megatron, Calvin Johnson, kind of like wide receiver. That
like he's a big dude.
That big dude, and can just go up. You throw the ball up, and he'll go up and get it.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of high expectations for him going for Seattle's offense, especially with Russell Wilson kind of creating a little duo there. But, you know, I'm excited for this NFL season to start. I wish it would start sooner.
I know.
But you know what? We just got to wait. But, you know, we just want to thank you guys for listening to our podcast today. Thank you for bearing with us on all of our NBA news that we've talked about today. This is a juicy NBA-filled podcast, but you know, cherry on top. You always got to end with the best part, and that's the NFL. So
you have to. Okay, but before we end, just one quick question. Here's a conspiracy theory for you about DK Metcalf. Do you think the guy's from Krypton? Like, honestly, think deep within yourself. Is this guy from Krypton? I'm going to have to say yes. He is Superman, like you said. That guy is not human, so I question his humanity at times. So that would be the last thing. What do you think? Is he from the planet Krypton? Is he human?
Well, we'll find out week 1.
Yeah, for sure. That is a good little tease for whatever podcasts come next. But again, I want to echo what Jason said. Thank you guys for all listening to the podcast. We really do appreciate all the listeners. Make this possible. This is awesome. This is one of the most fun things we've ever been able to do. So we really appreciate that. Like our videos, share them with your friends, subscribe. Helps us out a lot. It'll help us have a bigger reach. So maybe we could have a bigger audience and just really dish about sports. So thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope you guys have a good one. And it's J Mac and the Stallion signing out.
There we go. Woo-hoo.